Hello everyone, we can get started today since this is only meant to be a short video. We're just going to jump right into it. So first of all, thank you all and thank you very much for joining 42 Gears' first Bits and Bolts series episode. My name is Armaan Sami and I am the Territory Manager for DACH and the Netherlands, and it is my honor to be with you all here today. We are here because after last year and a few presentations and webinars that we did, we received a lot of feedback requesting more kind of shorter, not so formal videos that talked about everything that changes at 42 Gears from the functional product side of it. As many of you or multiple year users probably have already seen, we go through a lot of new features, a lot of new releases. Some of them might get publicized online and some of them sadly don't. So we're going to try to bring some light and talk about some of the more interesting ones that we find internally and some interesting use cases that you might come across as well here. So with that, I would like to acknowledge that SureMDM is constantly growing. So these features might be new and they might also be a mix of older features which have been around for a while, but maybe aren't getting enough attention. So there'll be a balance between the two here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of hosting this and doing this with you. And as this is our first webinar, there is one thing I would like to highlight, and that is that there is more than one reason why you should attend. Now, of course, the main reason is to learn more about SureMDM and the functions and features that you can and probably are already using. But by the end of the year in December, we will actually be doing a drawing where several lucky attendees will be able to win a gift or a prize from 42 Gears. All you have to do is attend. Each attendance gives you essentially one raffle and one chance to win the prize at the end of the year. Now, we had a little bit of technical difficulty this morning. Stuart Clark, our Africa Territory Manager, was also supposed to be on this call and meeting with me today. However, unfortunately, it looks like since 4:30 in the morning today, he did not have any power. So actually his whole city did not have any power and he won't be able to join. But I am, of course, here. And that means that, however, we were trying to cover two topics. One of them, which Stuart was going to cover, and the topic of how to use and set temporary passwords with Sherlock and SureMDM won't be covered today. Instead, we're just going to focus on some battery compliance and compliance job functionalities. And hopefully, once he is back on with us next time, he'll be able to tell you a little bit about why he thought temporary passwords with Sherlock is interesting. Now, as it comes to compliance and as it comes to SureMDM as a kind of a product in general, many of you which I've spoken to already know this. Our goal is to build a solution which is as flexible and as malleable to whatever use case and whatever situation you are looking to use it for or in. And this sometimes means that some functions become almost too complicated or too big and might be a little bit hard to understand or to wrap your head around. So one of them, which I really find is very interesting, and I use often to solve many problems or use cases, but I don't see many partners coming or end users coming to this idea on their own, is compliance. And a specific emphasis on battery compliance, because I think that the more and more we're looking to extend the longevity of a device, we're getting more firmware updates on devices. What we are not necessarily getting in many devices is a replaceable battery. And anything we can do to extend the life of a battery is pretty helpful. So with that, I'm going to show you all a really quick example. I'm going to stop sharing the screen really quick, just so you can see me a little bit larger and this device I have here. So this is a TC77 device. As you can see, it is just in Sherlock, very basic use case. But what happens is I've already configured a compliance job policy so that the moment this device is plugged into AC power, we will get a notification. And as you can hopefully already make out there, I'm sorry, it's a little bit small, but there's already been a message sent to this device. And that's what I wanted to do. Now, just to give you an example of how it works, how people actually use it, or in a whole variety of different ways. For instance, maybe we set a policy, I'll show you how to do this later, where you can stop the AC charge of a device. So although it's connected to USB power, the battery is not getting charged. So we can save the device from overcharging. You can also make it so the device powers off after a certain period of time, or after a certain period of time or certain charge, that you can customize and do whatever you want. It's very flexible, I'll show you. But what makes this function even more useful is the fact that if I come here and I go back and then I'm going to open our SureMDM Wi-Fi Center application. Once this loads, I will then be able to turn off up here. You can see that Wi-Fi has been turned off. I'm turning off Wi-Fi in system settings. You might be able to see that Wi-Fi is gray and off everywhere. So that means that this device currently has no access to Wi-Fi or cellular data. It's a non-cellular device. However, if I still connect it to AC power, we're going to have the same pop-up come up. Sorry, once I get it there, and you're going to see that right away the device recognizes that it is on power, and we get the command, the compliance job kicks off. How do we do this? This is happening because SureMDM has actually saved this this compliance job on the device locally. So it doesn't matter if you have connectivity, doesn't matter if you lose connectivity, any compliance job that you create is saved on the device and will always continue to work, especially for devices which might be mobile or maybe in scenarios where you don't always have a great connection. This job, it being stored, is very, very helpful. Now, with that, let's talk about how you could look at using the function and maybe some examples of how you could look at doing even more with it. So for starters, I always recommend that everyone, anytime you need any references or any help with finding a new product, functionality, guidance, or anything like that, come to our knowledge base. This is just knowledgebase.42gears.com, and here you can write something like battery compliance. And right away, we get a drop-down menu. We see a couple options. I'm going to click here on how to enable battery temperature compliance. Now, although we didn't use temperature as the example here, of course, this is something you can also use and also enable. Now, maybe you're thinking, why is battery or temperature so important? Well, I'm sure you all remember some devices exploding after a certain period of time or use case, or maybe you're in a hot environment. You can also do things like shut off the device when the battery gets to a certain threshold temperature or things like that. Or like how I did, just send a notification. But here, you're going to get all the different instructions, step by step, what you need to do to configure it. I'm going to show you this anyway, but just for future reference, you can come over here and get one step-by-step idea of what you should be configuring and how you should be configuring it. Now with that, let's go to SureMDM. I hope everyone's familiar with SureMDM, but we're going to do or configure compliance jobs here under jobs. So sadly, this is not something which you're going to find in profiles. It's something that you'll create as a job and either assign to a folder or to a composite job when a device enrolls. Every device will need to have this compliance job associated and pushed to it. Now, before I show you what I made, let me show you how to make one. If I come over here to jobs, I can come to new jobs, Android, and then almost at the very bottom, if I scroll down here, I have a few different types of jobs. There's also, by the way, casual jobs, but what we're looking for is compliance. We'll talk about the other ones later. But here in compliance, you see a long list of different parameters that we can use and say, if this scenario happens, then do this particular activity or do this particular thing to it. So I mentioned, again, there's a lot here, but we're talking about batteries today. So if I click over here to battery and hit configure, I then have a couple options here. First thing to look at when you're looking at compliance jobs, you also see this when you click on a different field or category, but at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you see the different platforms which supports this compliance job. Not every operating system supports every function here. Let me give you an example. In battery level, as you can imagine, in MDM, we can read that from almost any device. And that means that, yeah, Android, Windows, I guess these are going to be MacBooks, and Linux PCs, computers, whatever, have this function as well. iOS probably could too. I'm not sure why it's not here, but once we do know, I'll let you know. However, for battery temperature, we only have Android and Linux. So keep that in mind if you're testing something and it might not be working. How you should configure it and how you should use it. Essentially, the compliance rule here is the parameter of a device in its most optimal state. So this is the state I want the device to be at, and in this environment, it is at rest. So the device battery should not be less than, in this case, 1. And if I left it as it is, this would mean that if the battery hits 0%, it would turn off. Or it would turn off, but maybe I get a notification, maybe we configure something here. However, for the example I had done where I just connect and the device, you probably heard it vibrate there, but the device will automatically get the new pop-up message. What I actually did was set the battery level to 99, which means that I'm almost always out of compliance. Unless the battery is 100% charged, I am out of compliance. Now, this was something I did just for the case of this demo. Usually what somebody will do is something more realistic, like 50% or even a variable less than that in many cases. And although you can leave it just like this, you can say, hey, if the battery hits a certain level, let's do something to it. You can also configure different parameters, like is the device plugged in or is it unplugged? So in this example, of course, now it's plugged in. However, I could have also configured it so that if I unplugged it like that, then I would have got the notification. Both things are possible. And in different use cases, you might use one over the other. So, I mean, right now I'm talking about a mobile device, but in a POS system that's maybe always powered on, or in a, let's say, digital signage solution that should always be powered on or have AC power, you can play around with these to achieve different things and different functions. Now, this is the in compliance. So as I had it before, just in the case of the demo I showed you already, 99%, so almost any charge other than 100, and then if the device is plugged in. Device less than 100, plugged in, something will happen to it. Now, what will happen to the device? We can configure here on the right-hand side of the screen with the out of compliance actions. Now, again, what I had then done is send message. Very simple, very easy configuration. I probably would not use it in this scenario because, I mean, maybe you tell the user, hey, the POS system got unplugged, plug it back in. Maybe there's a reserve battery that's very short. Or you want to send a notification to a user that, hey, your battery is less than 20%, go swap it or go do something. Maybe in that case, it's useful if you're expecting an end user physically around the device to perform an action. However, in many cases, compliance jobs are being used to automate processes. I'll give you another example. If I come down and I open up the drop-down menu, for security reasons, maybe I need to block list a device or wipe a device because maybe it's a device with personal data on it. Maybe it's being used in a hospital or there's pictures of patients and emergencies, who knows what. But if the device is out of compliance, maybe not with battery, but there's been a SIM card change or the network has changed, hey, that should not have happened, wipe the device, clear all data, something like that. You can lock a device, you can send email or even text notifications. But again, where this gets even more fun and complicated is, at 42 Gears, we thought about the handful of things up here. But your use case will probably require something completely different. And that is where applied job becomes very interesting. Again, you're going to find this all over SureMDM, but the ability to set a applied job and then add any job, any profile, any activity that you've created is very powerful. Because then here I can say, for instance, shut off the screen. Or I can say, again, wipe this specific app's data, maybe remove all pictures in the picture folder of a device, or maybe save logs, do whatever you need. But you can create then any job, any activity, any script, and say when I am out of compliance, or when something happens like I'm on AC power, let's perform this activity. A real use case that we did recently was to prolong the device, or to make sure the devices are in a ready to use state. We had a situation where a client was looking to use looking to power off a device when the battery set a certain battery level. So the idea being the device is being used or it's in its process. Once the device hits 85%, and of course it's going to be plugged in, apply a job, and we had applied a shutdown script to the device. So the device went from being powered on to off, and then they had a way to automate it again so that they would essentially hit a switch, turn off AC power, so the device is still plugged in. Like if I unplug the USB side of it and plug in my device, nothing happens. But then the moment I plug it back into the wall, I hit the switch, the device would power on. So they automated kind of a power on and power off cycle for their devices using this combination. But again, many different things you can connect and automate here. Again, battery is just one example. It's one that's come up a little bit more often for me, so I wanted to talk about it. But this flexibility is something you can take advantage of anywhere. By the way, it doesn't stop there. There's one last final thing which I think is also interesting, and that is the ability to add a delay. Now here you can set the no delay, which is immediate. This is what I had right now. This is so if I plug it in right away, you get the notification and you hear the device going into this state. But you can set minutes, hours, and even days. This might be important for devices which have entered a state that maybe you don't need to act on right away, but that might need some, let's say, supervision, or you should look into it. Hey, is this device still acting in an unusual state after 1 hour or so? I'll give you the example. Maybe the device goes back into compliance after a few minutes and it's just an error. You maybe don't need to do anything to that device. So take it with a grain of salt, see how it works, play around with it. But I think it's a function that could be quite interesting. And if you have an activity that happens maybe too often, setting a delay might save it from happening too often. So again, high level, very simply put together. You can do this exact same process of in and out of compliance with almost any other compliance job we have here. And one thing that maybe we talk about or go more into detail with on one of our other episodes, but you can do the same with geofencing, network fencing, and time fencing. Sorry, pointed at the wrong order, but you know what I mean here. You can come in or out. There's some basic things you can do, but where the tool becomes very interesting is when you can mix and match it with your creativity and whatever scripts or jobs you're looking to use and to push. So normally we talk about 2 different features. Stuart would talk about one and I would talk about one as well. Maybe next time we do 3 or Stuart covers 2, we'll figure it out. But you will get this presentation and of course this deck afterwards so that you can confirm and you can check what type of information, or let's say what information we showed you and where you can dive a little bit deeper into it and learn more. So both of these links here are going to be taking you to the knowledge base article, which is related to directly or indirectly about the function and feature that we're talking about. Also, if you want to stay up to date to whatever features are being released that Stuart and I maybe don't have time to talk about right away, you can always join, and I recommend you join our 42 Gears community, so that here you can get notifications on updates, either apps that update or the system itself that updates, and be aware of exactly everything that's happening new with SureMDM. With that, And if you're trying to win the competition, please keep in mind the dates of the next events. I think you will get notifications. So if you have time, looking forward to having you join us all. But our next webinar, each one of the series of bits and bolts, is going to happen in 2 weeks on March 19th at the same time as today. And 2 weeks following that for every month as well. Right now we have the dates set until June, but of course the rest of the year will come very soon. Thank you all very much for joining us today. If you do have any questions, I'm open to hear them, but if there are no questions, thank you very much for joining our first episode of Bits and Bolts. And I'm looking forward to having you here for the next one and the next one and the next one after that. Let's see. I don't see any questions. I don't know, Gabby, I think you're on here with me as well. Are there anything?
No questions. Thank you, Armaan, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye.